I've seen a lot of people jump on the cheapest gaming laptop hype, only to end up with a machine that chokes on a single modern title and leaves the battery dead after an hour. The regret is real. You spend a few $100 and then you're stuck buying a new PC or a desktop tower you can actually game on. That's why I wanted to see if the Acer Nitro V16 SAI actually feels like a smarter buy, or if it's just another flashy name on a thin and light chassis. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first thing that makes most buyers hesitate with any high-performance laptop is the balance between raw specs and how those specs translate into everyday gaming. On paper, the Nitro V16S packs a Ryzen 7 260, AMD's AI-enhanced silicon, and an RTX 5060 built on NVIDIA's new Blackwell architecture, plus 32GB of DDR5 RAM and a 1TB PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD. Those numbers look like a future-proof rig, but the real question is whether they actually give you a smoother experience in the titles you'll be playing tonight. I started by testing a few of the most demanding games that sit at the sweet spot of today's AAA releases. Think Cyberpunk 2077 on high settings, Elden Ring with ray tracing off but DLSS on, and Valorant at ultra-high frame rates for competitive play. The RTX 5060, despite being a newer chip, still slots into the mid-range tier. In practice, it delivered solid 6075 frames per second at 1080p with the 180Hz Wuxka panel on, and when I turned on DLSS 4 in Cyberpunk, the frame count jumped into the low 90s without any noticeable ghosting. That's a practical win. The laptop doesn't just have the tech on paper, it actually lets you push high refresh monitors to their limits without constantly tweaking settings. One of the most overlooked parts of a gaming laptop is how it handles heat when you're grinding through long sessions. Acer's Nitro cooling system uses a dual-fan layout paired with quad intake vents. I ran a 3-hour marathon of Apex Legends while streaming to Twitch at 1080p, and the fan stayed at a moderate whir, never hitting the obnoxious screaming noise you sometimes get on cheaper models. The chassis stayed around 80°C under load, which is high but still within safe limits for the components. In other words, you can actually sit in a coffee shop, fire up a game, and not have the whole table shake from fan vibrations. Storage speed is another hidden value point. The 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD is not just big enough for a sizable game library, it also loads worlds incredibly fast. Elden Ring went from desktop to playable in under 10 seconds, and level transitions in Assassin's Creed Valhalla felt almost instantaneous. If you're the kind of gamer who hates waiting for textures to pop in, that SSD is a noticeable day-to-day advantage. Now, let's talk about the practical downsides. First, the display, while crisp at 1920x1200 and buttery smooth at 180Hz, is still a 1080p panel. If you're used to 1440p or 4K monitors, you'll notice the lower pixel density, especially when you sit close to the screen. That's a trade-off Acer makes to keep the refresh rate high and the power draw manageable. Second, the laptop's weight hovers around the 5-pound mark, so it's portable enough for a coffee shop but not something you'll comfortably lug around campus all day. Lastly, the battery life isn't a headline number in the spec sheet, and in my testing it lasted roughly 3.5 hours when gaming on battery alone. That's typical for a machine with a dedicated RTX GPU, but it means you'll want to stay near a power outlet for extended sessions. Who should consider the Nitro V16S? If you're a serious PC gamer who wants to play the latest titles at high frame rates without dropping to a desktop, this laptop gives you a solid mix of power and portability. It's also a good fit for streamers who need that extra RAM for OBS overlays and a fast SSD to handle recording while gaming. The AI enhancements in the Ryzen processor add a bit of future-proofing for software that starts to lean on machine learning workloads, so creators who dabble in video editing or AI-assisted rendering will find the extra headroom useful. On the flip side, if you prioritize ultralight travel, you need a 4K display for color-critical work, or you're on a tight budget, this isn't the best match. The price sits in the premium mid-range, and you'll pay for the high refresh screen and the large memory footprint. For someone who mostly plays indie games or older titles that don't tax the GPU, a cheaper laptop with a lower-end GPU could save you a few $100s without sacrificing your experience. Overall, the Acer Nitro V16 SAI feels like a thoughtful compromise between raw horsepower and real-world usability. It avoids the classic pitfall of spec-only marketing by delivering a smooth high-refresh experience, respectable cooling, and storage speed that actually cuts down waiting.